We're about to take on inversion, but before we do that, I want to add something to our chart of seventh chord qualities. That is this part of the page right here. I mentioned that I like the notation where a major triad plus a minor seventh results in a major minor seventh chord, because you can just read straight through it and it tells you the quality of the triad, quality of the seventh, and that it's a seventh chord. There are a couple more terms like that, and I do like the system where a major triad plus a major seventh chord is called a major seventh chord. And I will probably say this in class sometimes. I'll call something a major seventh chord. Our book calls it simply a major seventh chord, which is fine. It's short. But I also like calling it major seventh because it tells the whole thing. So down here, same situation, a minor triad plus a minor seventh can be called a minor seventh chord, and I like that notation as well. And I will accidentally use it from time to time, even though our book calls that chord a minor seventh chord. Let's go on to inversion. When a triad appears, as we've looked at it, stacked in thirds with the root on the bottom, it looks just like a little snowman. This is called root position. We can change that though. If we move the bottom note higher, move the root higher in the voicing, so that now the third of the chord is on the bottom. We've just taken that note and got it out of the way up here. But now, what music theorists say is now the third is exposed on the bottom. We can hear the third of the chord better. Listen to this. Here's an F major triad in root position. Now here it is in first inversion. So the third of the chord is on the bottom. This is called first inversion. So the root is on the bottom, now the third is on the bottom. If we make another change, get the third out of the way so that the fifth of the chord is exposed on the bottom, and we just get the other two notes out of the way up higher, so now we can hear the fifth more clearly. When the fifth of the chord is on the bottom, this is called second inversion. Is there such a thing as a third inversion? If we get the fifth out of the way so we can hear the root on the bottom again, well, no, that's the same thing as root position. So these are the only three configurations we can have of a triad: root position, first inversion, or second inversion. And sometimes we'll refer to root position as one of the inversions and say there are three inversions and root position is one of them. Okay. By convention, inversion depends only on bass note. That's a very important sentence. I'll put little underlines. Inversion depends only on bass note. So what that means is, as long as the third is on the bottom, I can write the root there and the fifth of the chord way up here. That doesn't matter. This is still first inversion. Okay, so by convention, inversion depends only on the bass note. Well, what do we mean by bass note? Bass note means the lowest note. And sometimes we'll even use the term the lowest sounding note. So up here in root position, the F is the bass note. Here, the A is the bass note. It's the lowest sounding note of the three notes in the chord. It's not the root, it's just the note that happens to be the lowest sounding. In second inversion, the C is the lowest sounding note. The root is elsewhere, but the C, which is the fifth of the chord, is the lowest sounding note. It could be in treble clef, it could be in bass clef. It's just the lowest sounding note at that moment. So we can add to this chart, in root position, the root is in the bass. That's another thing we have to define. saying the root is in the bass means that the root is the lowest sounding note. It's not in bass clef, it's in treble clef, but being in the bass means you're the lowest sounding note. So what's the note in the bass of first inversion? Well, that means the third of the chord is in the bass. In this chord, the fifth is in the bass. And that is the definition of second inversion. So, by convention, inversion depends only on bass note. That's the lowest sounding note. Any doubling is possible. It has no effect on the inversion. It does not affect the inversion if, say, I double the third up here. The chord is still in first inversion. If I add another fifth up here, all these things happening above the bass note don't matter. That's still first inversion because the third is in the bass. With that information, we are now able to label triads on the grand staff with root, quality, and inversion. We'll put those in a stack under each chord. So let's start looking at the first one. We have E, C, and G. We can quickly place those notes in order as we did before, C, E, G. So we're looking at a C triad, so we'll put the root there. How about the quality of it? C, E, G is C major triad, so we'll put major there. And how about the inversion? Which of those three chord members is in the bass? Well, the E is there in the bass, and we can see by looking up here that that is the third of the chord. So when the third of the chord is in the bass, we have first inversion. I'll label this over here. Root, the quality, and the inversion. You'll have to do something like this on your homework. Next chord, C, A, E, C, E. We can ignore the duplications there, and the different letter names we have are just the C, the A flat, and the E. So we quickly determine that we can order those into A, C, E. Make sure we put the flat there. So the A flat is the root of the chord. How about the quality of this chord? A flat to C is a major third, C to E is another major third. So this is an augmented triad. So A flat's the root. Put an A there for augmented. How about the inversion? Which of those three notes is in the bass? C is in the bass. Once again, that's the third of the chord, so this is a first inversion triad. Next one, C, F sharp, A, F sharp. Ignore the duplication and switch the order of the notes around until they fit our pattern. And so we know this is an F-A-C chord. The notes are F sharp, A, and C. So we'll put F sharp here as the root of the chord. How about the quality of the chord? F sharp to A is minor third, A to C is also minor third. So this is a diminished triad. Now which tone is in the bass? The root, the third, or the fifth? The fifth is in the bass. So this is a second inversion triad. Last one. The notes are E, B, and G. That stacks up as E, G, B if we want it stacked in thirds. They all have flats on them, which we need to determine the quality here. E flat to G flat is a minor third. G flat to B flat is a major third. So this is a minor triad. It's an E flat is the root, minor is the quality. And which of those three chord members is in the bass? The root is in the bass. So this chord is in root position. So technically it's not inverted, but we will just call it root position in our row of inversions. Inversion of seventh chords follows exactly the same logic as triads, so let's go through it. First we have here a seventh chord as a nice stack of thirds with the root on the bottom. That's how you get this nice stack. And so this is called root position with the root in the bass. Next we have first inversion with the third of the chord in the bass. So notice here, when we place the root up higher in the voicing, it creates a second with the seventh of the chord. Naming the parts over here, root, third, fifth, and seventh, we see that the seventh of the chord is now bumping into the root, and so they have to be placed diagonally on the staff. Okay, over here we have exposed the fifth of the chord in the bass, and this is called second inversion, created by putting the fifth in the bass. And here we have the seventh of the chord in the bass, and this creates third inversion. And there the cycle ends, because we see if we get the seventh out of the way so that this note can be the bass note, that is the root again, so we're back to root position. So there is no fourth inversion. By convention, remember that inversion depends only on what the bass note is, and we can move the upper notes around or double them. Here's a B in an upper voice, we'll add another one here. We could erase the one that's down there. We still will have a second inversion seventh chord as long as the fifth of the chord is in the bass. Let's go on to label some seventh chords with root, quality, and inversion. This is exactly what you're going to do on some of your homeworks. So, first chord has a G, E, A, and a C sharp. Our first task is finding the root, G, E, A, C. That spells out in a stack of thirds as A, C, E, G, so the root is A. If we write this for reference here, A, C sharp, E, and G, now we can look at it and see what the quality is. Looks like a major triad with a minor seventh added on top of it, so this is a major, minor, seventh chord. And which tone is in the bass? Which of the chord tones? The root, third, fifth, or seventh? The seventh is in the bass. See that G down there? So this is called third inversion. Let's go on to the next one. C, A, E, F. We can spell that in thirds as F-A-C-E. So the root of this chord is F. I will tell you a nice trick right now. If you ever see in a seventh chord these two notes together, a second, that are kind of bumping into each other or written diagonally, the upper of those two notes is the root of the chord. Let's go on to quality. Now we can stack the chord up in thirds. F, A flat, C, E flat. What is that quality? We have a minor triad with a minor seventh, so this is a minor seventh chord. Which tone is in the bass? The fifth of the chord is in the bass, so this is second inversion. This one, F, B, A, D. We can quickly spell that out as BDFA. No accidentals, but that's our stack of thirds, BDFA. So B is the root of the chord. The quality is a diminished triad with a minor seventh added onto it. So this is a half diminished seventh chord. The inversion gives us the fifth of the chord in the bass. This is second inversion. Last one, E, C sharp, G sharp, B. What's the root of that? That spells out as C, E, G, B. So C sharp, E, G sharp, B. C sharp is the root. Quality is a minor triad with a minor seventh. So minor seventh. And which chord tone is in the bass? The third of the chord. So this is first inversion. First inversion, seventh chord. Inversions can also be expressed by numbers called figured bass. There's a system that works like this. Here we have all the triad inversions written out, And here are all the seventh chord in each inversion written out with their labels as inversions. There's a system called figured bass that is Arabic numerals that indicate the intervals above the bass note. So if we count up from the bass note of a triad in root position, we'll find a note that's a third and a note that's a fifth above the bass note, and this is called 5-3 position. That's the figured bass. For a first inversion chord, what are the intervals above the lowest sounding note? Well, G is a third above that E, and the C is a sixth. So this is called 6-3 position, or 6-3 inversion. In second inversion, now this note is a fourth above the bass note, and this note is a sixth, so this is called 6-4 position. Now, remember, these are all C major triads, but only this one is a stack of thirds. That's a special position when it's a stack of thirds. This one has a third and a fourth, this one has a fourth and a third, but it's still the exact same notes, C, E, G, just in a different vertical order. All right, let's do the same thing with the seventh chords. A root position seventh chord, if we count out all those intervals, can be said to be in 7-5-3 position. A first inversion seventh chord, 6-5-3, and we can verify this just by counting up from E. The G is a third, the B is a fifth, and the C is a sixth, 6-5-3. Do it for this one, 6-4-3, and this one, 6-4-2. And we'll use this notation and this terminology a lot of the time. In this form, calling a chord 6-4-2 is not much simpler than calling it third inversion, but there are abbreviations that we're going to use almost exclusively. So a root position chord, we'll really just continue to call this a root position chord, but we can abbreviate the figured bass just as a dash. This is a hard one to start out on because we're not even used to the notation yet, but root position chords are so common and so expected that if we don't write a figured bass number at all, we just expect the chord to be in root position. So that dash means there's nothing written except the chord symbol, and we assume it to be in root position. First inversion chords, instead of calling them 6-3 all the time, we usually just call them 6. So a chord of the sixth, or in 6 position. 6-4 chords, we don't abbreviate because it would be confused with the first inversion, so 6-4 chords don't have an abbreviation. Root position seventh chord abbreviates as just a 7. This is abbreviated as a 6-5 chord. This is a 4-3 chord. This is known as a 4-2 chord. So this will become familiar to you. These are the abbreviations that you'll be using in the blanks on your written assignment. We now know enough to start on our assignment, so let's do a couple from the first 2 sections. Number 1, ID each seventh chord by quality, and here are the possible qualities. Major, major seventh. Okay, so that's, I told you I would fall into this terminology. I'm asking you on the homework to call it a major, major seventh, major minor seventh, or minor, minor seventh. Those are the terms I really like because they spell everything out for you, and the half diminished and the fully diminished seventh chord. So let's look at the first one. We need to break this into a triad, which is GBD, and then the interval of a seventh, which goes from G up to that F. So the triad is a major triad, GBD, and the seventh is minor. From G up to F natural is a minor seventh. So it's this one, major minor seventh. Let's look at one in bass clef over here, maybe number 7. A flat, C, E flat. What kind of triad is that? Major. A flat to G. What kind of seventh is that? Major. So this is a major, major 7 chord. I would also accept this answer because this is the notation your book uses, just plain major seventh. Both of those are correct. Part B, more involved. This is what we were just doing. Name the root, quality, and figured bass. Remember, figured bass is a different notation for inversion. But we're going to use the figured bass numbers in the blanks. So here's a bank of possible answers. Possible qualities for triads: major, minor, augmented, or diminished. Perhaps you know those symbols. Plus means augmented. The little zero means diminished. Seventh chords, these qualities that we just discussed up there. Possible figured bass for triads, either blank, that means you just put a dash in the blank. 6 for first inversion, 6/4 for second inversion, and there are your inversion numbers for seventh chords. Okay, let's try the first one because it's number 1. We have a D, A, F, and C. If we spell that out, stack it up in thirds, D is going to be on the bottom, D, F, A, C, like that, so the root is D. How about the quality of this chord? It's a seventh chord. Oh, I should remind you that triads and seventh chords are all mixed together in this exercise. So the first thing you have to do is figure out if you have a triad or a seventh chord. There are 4 different notes here, so this has to be a seventh chord. Quality of the triad on the bottom is minor. Quality of the seventh is minor. So this is a minor, minor seventh chord. And the figured bass that expresses the inversion, well, this is a root position seventh chord, so we can't just use the dash. That's for triads. We go over here, and root position seventh chords are indicated just with a 7. So the figured bass number is 7. For number 7, we have a B flat, G, D, D. So there are 4 notes, but there are only 3 different notes. So this is a triad. B flat, G, D. How do we stack that in thirds? G, B, D. Like that. G, B flat, D. Figure out the quality. Oh, first we'll put the root is G. Quality is minor. And finally, which chord member is in the bass? There's a B flat in the bass. That's the third of the chord. So what's our figured bass symbol? Well, from among the triads, the 6 indicates first inversion, meaning the third is in the bass, so we put a 6 here.